topic, and I don't think the panelists need any introduction. The reason why Samir is sitting in between is because they're three colleagues, ex-Lemon so we wanted to make sure he's boxed in. Well, depends. Well, we'll start with a personal take on hospitality, if that's okay. Mr. Pandit, we'll start with you. From your experience, what are the fundamental shifts in the Indian hospitality landscape and cities you most want to be in today?
Thank you, Nikhil. I think sometimes to look at the future, it's good to take a lesson back in history, because history is a good portent of what's in the future. So what's happening in hospitality in India, in many ways, is underpinned by a couple of macros which have panned out earlier too. And the same macros are set to repeat in India. So today when we say we are on the path to being the third largest economy, it's interesting to see what's happened to the largest economy, which is the United States, and the second largest economy, which is China. And the structural drivers in those economies are going to influence what's happening in India. And it's an interesting thing because each nation over the last 200 years effectively gets about a nucleus of 3 decades. And 3 critical factors come into propelling those economies. So if you look at the dominant economy today, the United States, the nucleus forward started in 1955, effectively after the Second World War, with General Dwight Eisenhower. And 3 things happened. First was a major focus on infrastructure. Starting General Eisenhower's time, who was the 34th president, to the 40th, which was Ronald Reagan. In that period, the United States built 65,000 kilometers of interstate highways. The infrastructure of US that we see today, which is ports, highways, and highways led to office stock, and office stock led to hotel stock. The same story then unfolds in other geographies, so it's very interesting. So the first is public capex by the government, which starts attracting private capex after about 10 years of public capex injection. The second is demographics. The United States had their demographics advantage, so the generation that we call the baby boomers today was the demographic kernel of United States at that point in time. And third is building of a consumer class. So interestingly, post-1990, the United States actually hasn't even built any major highway or airports and so on and so forth. And now Shri Trump is effectively trying to reindustrialize the United States to usher that in. So post-1989, the baton shifted to China, starting with Deng Xiaoping, then going to Hu Jintao, Zheng Xiaomin, and now Xi Jinping. So what's happened interestingly, 1990 if we see the GDP of India and China, India was actually ahead of China. Our per capita was $368. China was $319. And today, it's very interesting. India is $2,700 and China is $13,000. So China is 5.5 times of India. So the same storybook played out in China, which was massive injection of public capex to build infrastructure, which led to private capex investment, and then the rise of consumption in China becoming a factory to the world. And now China's demographics is in decline, and what do we see in India today? It's the same repeat. It's a 30-year repeat because the generational advantage continues for 30, 35 years of demographics. So India today is a construction site. We have the Bharatmala scheme. We are building 35,000 kilometers of highways. 5.35 lakh crores in Bharatmala. We are spending 8 lakh crores in Sagarmala building ports. We are spending 100,000 crores in Gati Shakti, which is getting 14 ministries together to speed up logistics. Similarly, demographics advantage we know of the country, and interestingly, over the next 25 years, 1 in 5 jobs globally is going to be Indians. So along with that, as we move up the fulcrum, the same drivers which have impacted other economies have come to India. So what do these drivers do? What are they doing to India? The first macro which is getting unleashed in India is urbanization. 85 million people, which is like more than the population of Germany, have moved to our cities over the last 10 years. And I was telling this to my daughter, and she said, "Dad, if that's true, why don't we see them?" The answer is simple, because those 85 million people look like you and me. Imagine if they were all Gora Germans, the complexion of our cities would change literally and figuratively. We are used to large numbers. 34% of India is today in its cities. In the next 25 years, 50% of India is going to be in its cities. Nowhere in the world has urbanization happened at this rapid pace. So what happens with urbanization at this rapid pace? First is people lose their ethnic bearings. So why is religious travel shaping up? Because when you have lost your bearings very rapidly, you are looking for a connect to your roots. So pilgrimage, religious travel is booming up. When you are moving to cramped quarters and a young generation with double income couples, you need time to reconnect. So let's say in cities like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, couples are taking a break just to chat with each other. So all of these structural macros which are playing out, and I'll end with something interesting. So when we are looking at, let's say, hospitality capex investments, we look at an adjacent sector, airlines, for example, to say what's the guidance there. Because while our capex is backloaded, in case of airlines, whether it's wet leasing or whatever, the capex is front-loaded. So the biggest injection I saw was in 2004, where forward orders were 30% of existing supply. So it meant that India could absorb, in that sense, 30% more supply of upscale and deluxe. Today, we have 771 aircraft in India, and 1,400 new aircraft have been ordered for delivery over the next 5 years. This means our air travel capacity is increasing, it's doubling. We have 148 airports today. In the next 5 years, this is going to become 230 airports. So this is just a proxy. So I think if you look at all these macros, it's not only a story for hospitality, which it is, but in many ways, this is a story which says what's going to happen to India's bedrock foundation moving ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Pandit. You actually pipped the second segment of industry trends, so we'll skip that eventually because I think you've answered for all three of them.
Rahul's answered for all of us, by the way.
Yeah, on the industry trends. I'm still on personal take. Samir, IHG, Fortune, you've been a key pillar of Fortune in shaping it and so on and so forth. In your journey, what is the one lesson that you think you should have learned earlier, and what advice would you want to give?
I'll touch on both, the personal take as well. First of all, I agree with everything Rahul said. I'm not debating with him. Secondly, on the personal take, I think you asked this question on where would you like to be. Having now sort of worked across 10, 11 geographies, I think this is the time when you have to be in India. And India is definitely what it seems to be the best location for
learning in your journey.
And now coming to the learning in the journey. So I think the one learning in my journey was if I had tried a few things out earlier, I would have probably become a lot more stronger in my knowledge of the markets. For example, I went into the development side of the business much later in my career than some others. So that's one learning.
So guys, get into development is what Samir is saying. Okay, Vikram studied in Mayo and he was known as the Prince of Jorhat. So question to the Prince of Jorhat. What's one travel destination that has inspired you personally and professionally, and how has it influenced your approach in hospitality?
Okay, so I want to just add one point to what Rahul said, and I'll make it really short, guys. The, see, the big change in the hospitality industry that we saw post-COVID is that across the board, better sense prevailed, and for the first time, and I've got industry veterans here, for the first time, hotels went about increasing price and not waiting for occupancy. Prices in our business always used to lag occupancy. Pehle occupancy hoti thi, fir price badhate the. Post-COVID, the reverse happened, which I think was a big turning point for our industry. Yeah.
That was not the question. You remember the question?
Actually, I'd forgotten the question, yeah.
I knew it.
So I said, let me answer what I prepared, yeah.
One destination that has inspired you professionally, personally, how has it shaped you in hospitality?
So professionally, I remember when I was a part of Lemon Tree and when Goa was opening, I was stationed here for about 9 months on the trot. And I remember my ex-chairman saying that, listen, I don't know if I can save your marriage, but I'll pay for your divorce lawyer. Okay, so that was a gentleman I was interviewing last evening. But if you ask me, it's definitely Goa, yeah. It always amazes you. There's a new facet to it every time.
With your family as well?
And with and without.
Okay, we'll skip the industry trends because I think Mr. Pandit has summed it up pretty well. We'll move to the third leg, which is sustainability and long-term growth. Because Samir spoke of business development, I have to ask him the first question. With the industry's rapid expansion, there's a growing need for trained hospitality resources. How is Fortune Hotels and ITC addressing these challenges of hiring, retaining skilled talent, and sustainable growth?
So, if you look at some of the challenges in the industry, and I think the consensus is that typically it's people which will come across as either the number one or number two. We're no different. So in ITC Hotels and Fortune, of course, very much an integral part of it, there's a lot of focus on people. In fact, there are still lesser people who have grown from outside the system into the system than within the ranks, and we have got some great examples of how people have grown within the company, starting from my boss, Anil. So it's a company which is known for growing people, and hence I think there are a lot of positives in a company like that. The challenge which we see currently is getting people to stay, which is very similar to what most other industries, or most other hotels or companies in the same industry are going through. Of course, there is a lot of focus now on employee engagement, looking at what are the activities we'll do for talent development, talent management, and making sure we are retaining the right people with a mix of rewards and opportunities to learn and grow. And that's the same with Fortune as well. So in Fortune, today I can say that close to 50% of our general managers have grown within the ranks. And that's something which, we have put in a lot of effort over the last four to 5 years to make sure that we start identifying people early on in their careers.
Going ahead?
Going ahead, we'll continue the same trend. It's a target we've all taken on to ourselves as our leadership team, so very confident.
Okay, so you just heard Samir, he's committing to scaling at ITC and Fortune. I think that actually deserves a round of applause, guys, because that's really the need of the hour.
I must say that to help us, there are also some new players who have come in and I don't know if Natwar is around, but must give credit to Natwar for doing a great job of what he's doing with Job Plus. We definitely need more people like that. So that could be an alternate career I should look at some stage.
Okay, Mr. Pandit, in your recent interview, you mentioned that Advent Hotels is focused on mid-market and luxury segment. How do you see this dual approach contributing to the long-term sustainability of India's hospitality boom?
I think short answer, India has lots of headroom to grow. So both the segments have huge opportunity. Now, depending on what sort of capex and what's your investment cycle, and what's the appetite of the capital stack for gestation. So if you put this on the x-axis, then on the y-axis you say where is demand, whether it is leisure or business, and how do you want to go in. So if you could triangulate something like this, India has, I think, at least over 100 pin codes, and couple of them still not discovered, where lots of supply, can get in still. And I'll give you an interesting thing when we are looking at this, and people have spoken of what's the opportunity. Just look at on the demand side, which will give us a sense of what's happening. Today we have 500,000 people traveling by air every day. So if we say half the guys are doing a return journey, this means 250,000 people need a place to stay. We have 4 million Indians who travel intercity every day on our trains. This means 2 million people. If we again say that half the guys are going home, 2 million people need a place to stay. We have 7 million Indians who travel intercity by bus. Similarly, 3.5 million Indians need a place to stay. So if we add all of this up, our total lodging demand every day is 5 million beds. And this is not accounting for surface transport through cars, because I don't have data. So if our demand stack is so huge on one side, and on the other side you see the opportunity stack, and it's like a regular Maslow of demand. And I heard Jeff and Dimitri's yesterday, and we've heard Mandeep and the entire HVS team speak of the big opportunity on the economy and mid-scale, because the pyramid of opportunity is so huge. So at, like the Maslow, at the base, and similar happened in US, with the rise of interstate highways. Or now, even if you see the next boom in US is happening courtesy the IRA Act, which is reindustrializing the United States by making infrastructure. Or the CHIPS Act. Similar happened in China. Similar is set to roll out. And you see lots of accommodation. Today, it's difficult to book dharamshalas in many places, because that's become the de facto answer to absence of branded supply. So similarly, if we go up, today, the opportunity is at least a 20x lodging opportunity at the base of the pyramid. There is a 10x opportunity in the middle of the pyramid. And then there is a 5x opportunity at the top of the pyramid. And India is a subcontinent. There are so many geographies we've not even tapped into. And I was hearing the McKinsey chairman say something which is so relevant to us. He said, this is not India's decade. This is India's century. So I think in the century to come, I think we are going to discover the great potential that this great country has.
Vikram, in your 50 and 5 vision, that's what the vision you've said, right? 50 and 5?
Yeah, 50 and 5.
You've mentioned focusing on both owned and leased assets, right? How do you see balancing the risks and rewards of these two models, and how are you going to ensure long-term sustainability for ALIVAA?
So it's not really owned, because I'm looking at a lease model, which is a hybrid. See, I'm very clear, I'm not a brand. People don't know ALIVAA yet, so I'm not going to get management contracts. There are a lot of the big boys sitting here and outside as well. So therefore, for me to get flags initially, I needed to take the P&L risk, which is why I took the leasing route. So that's the way. The first thing is to get enough flags on the ground. The first 10 hotels, I'm assuming, will only be through leases or rev shares or minimum guarantees, because that's the only way I'll get some marquee assets in some great locations. Otherwise, everybody here will lap it up and nothing's going to come to me here. But I think eventually the idea is to go asset light. And this approach of leasing is to eventually go asset light when the brand is known, when there are enough flags, when we are in enough cities, we've built enough of a distribution network so that we can give the owners the kind of returns that they would expect from any brand.
And how many cities are you targeting?
So So the idea is to concentrate on 4 or 5 cities rather than, spreading myself thin initially. So like, I don't mind putting up, say, 5 hotels in Gurgaon. I have 2 already, but I would look at 5 more. I've just signed 1 in Bombay, but I'm looking at 3 more in Bombay. So the idea is to look at the top 5 cities of India first and then spread out.
So where does Corbett fit in?
Corbett was more opportunistic.
So
It was a
opportunity
good commercial
dependent,
deal.
opportunity dependent, you will look at sites.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, bravo, bravo. Samir, Fortune Hotels, strong presence in metro, tier 1, tier 2. How are you leveraging technology at ITC and what is the long-term plan? I mean, you heard so much about AI yesterday, but any plans on your end?
Over the last 3-4 years in the run-up to the demerger and listing ITC hotels, there was a lot of work which went in the back end of trying to see how the brands work better together. So we had a lot of things which we were doing on our own. Over the last 2-3 years, we have tried to leverage of the strengths of ITC hotels on many things, starting with getting onto one distribution system. So we are all on one distribution system. We leverage the loyalty program, one of the best loyalty programs in the country. We leverage that a lot better. So we're using that. We are just in the process of going through a fairly extensive CRM, which will help us leverage technology as well. And I think that's just the beginning. There's, of course, going to be a lot more which we'll do. And get technology on into our company.
So I'll dovetail that for Mr. Pandit. You've spoken about role of technology and in hospitality and how you see tech innovations like AI and automation shaping the sustainable India. What's your view on tech and what should hoteliers be doing that we're not doing at the moment?
What should we be doing in tech that we are not doing right now? I think for business to become more efficient, and hospitality is a people's business, I think in a total gamut of business and operating our products and our brands, I think the big shift tech has to do is to enable us focus more on our customers and our stakeholders. So if we are building a portfolio, what can tech do to guide us where to go? What can tech do us to guide us how to attract supply? If we are operating hotels, how can tech free up our time and efficiency to actually serve customers? So for example, the customer is worried if his or her tea and coffee is served right. The customer may not be worried what your HR process is or what your receivables process is. How can tech do that? How can we leverage tech for data insights? How do we make our pricing better, for example? And a big challenge for hospitality today is talent. So how do we look at tech actually to drive up the talent quotient for the industry? Are we going to be dependent on hotel schools? And in India in 2023, you will be shocked to know that till a decade ago, there were more people applying than there were seats. In 2023, 64% of hotel seats only had takers. This means 36% hotel seats were available in management schools. There were no takers. So what can tech do at different sections of society to skill, absorb, and employ people? So in that sense, tech will have a hugely overpowering role. And if I see on supply creation and cost of running our businesses, how do we leverage tech as an OpEx, as an arbitrage against CapEx? So that will be, those are very, very unique opportunities. And then you could split it to say what role will, if you look at business, let's say creating a development pipeline. Like today we are creating India's largest integrated hospitality complex at Delhi AeroCity. It's $1 billion+ project. It's 800 keys between a St. Regis and a Marriott Marquis. We are creating 616,000 square feet of office in that one project. So when I look at it to say, what are our 3 big determinants? Is time, cost, and quality. For example, what do we do with tech to compress time? How do we monitor our quality? And obviously, how does it give us a cost arbitrage? So I think with tech, we have to wear an overall business lens and look at 2 things. What can tech do here and now, like projects? and what can tech do to strengthen our future, whether it is with our customers or whether it is with our talent base.
So at Advent, you would look at the top 5 cities typically, or you would want to spread into leisure locations as well?
Okay, see, on the big box, which is effectively luxury, where we operate, we have, for example, the Grand Hyatt Goa here, we have the Hilton in Bombay, we are also looking at developments in Worli and BKC, we are doing AeroCity. So for the big box, it will be...
Next one.
Sorry?
Radisson. Next one, Radisson with you.
Next one. So big boxes would be cities which are already there, which are demand dense. And when we roll out our mid-market strategy, then it will be a pan-India envelope.
So Vikram, would Goa make it to your list of top 5 cities? Because you spoke about Goa earlier.
List of top 5 cities. Right?
Yeah.
So see,
To spread.
sorry?
You said hub models, right? So would Goa make it in that list?
Sorry, your voice is echoing, huh?
Would Goa make it to the list?
No, absolutely. See, I'll tell you, when you do leases, you're taking a P&L risk, and therefore you want destinations which are all year round and not seasonal. Therefore, you would shy away from locations which are, popular 6 months of the year, and the other 6 months of the year they are shut. And that's the big learning I've had from my previous organization, where we did a fair amount of leases, and I read, you get one lease wrong, and you can be bleeding to death, yeah. So if you ask me, I would look at, demand dense markets. So Gurgaon definitely, Bombay, Hyderabad and Bangalore. These are my 4 cities, and then some opportunistic deals on the side. And in the leisure portfolio, probably only Goa and Rishikesh is what I'm exploring at the moment.
So business and leisure, you're looking at both segments.
Little less leisure and more of business cities, primarily because of the fact that demand is 365 days of the year.
And how will you ensure consistent brand identity because there are diverse markets, diverse needs from a business and leisure perspective?
So to simplify my life, I've launched 2 brands. One is more upscale and one is more economy stroke budget. And see, the good part is that in leases, because you're putting some capex and you have you're guaranteeing returns to the owner, they're willing to make tweaks to your product because he's guaranteed a return from day one. He's guaranteed a lease rental, which he can actually take to the bank and do a lease rental discounting and even pull out some of his capital. So I think in that sense, I've been lucky with owners, and they've so far agreed to the tweaks that I've suggested.
So if anyone has, you don't want to make a pitch here, anyone has lease hotels in Goa, because there are a lot of owners here.
You know?
There are a lot of owners here. Do you want to make a pitch for your leased hotels in Goa?
I will take all of them. As many as that can come my way.
Okay, last round of questions. We will run out of time. Vikram, we'll go with you. You're planning rapid growth of ALIVAA, yeah? What measures are you taking to maintain service quality and, again, ensuring long-term sustainability? I keep coming to long-term sustainability because as you build a brand, you need to think long-term. So what's your vision there?
I totally agree with you. And I think in terms of what I'm doing, see, at the moment, we are very small and we are monitoring everything because it's just 2 operating hotels, another couple of them. But I think eventually it will be the systems and processes which will take over. I've seen it in my previous avatar when I was part of a startup, which today is a $1.5 billion company. And I think, necessity is what makes it happen. At the moment, and it also depends on what the promoter is focusing on. So, so today, if you ask me, my primary focus is getting the right asset and making sure that the P&L is correct, making sure that my cost structure is correct, because that's what I want to embed in our system, in our DNA from day one. So, I think that will evolve over time, if you ask me.
Bravo. Samir, there was a lot of talk of spiritual travel between yesterday and today. You entered Ayodhya, you've signed at Ayodhya and Prayagraj. Are you entering more high potential competitive markets, and what's your strategy at Fortune?
So I'll touch both ITC Hotels and Fortune, given that, we sort of do a lot of things in development together. So across our brands, we have realized that there's a lot of opportunity in spiritual destinations, and Ayodhya is probably just one of those which had a lot more noise than other destinations, or a lot more visibility than other destinations. I think there are a lot of destinations which are growing in the spiritual segment. Having said that, there are already quite a few locations where we are present, and we are seeing some great performances. So, starting from Katra all the way in the north to Tirupati in the south, we do see pilgrimage being pretty much a year-round and, a good demand generator in that sense. Of course, the important part is to position the hotel right, because price point can be something which is it's a little more of a challenge than some of the key city locations. Having said that, the Fortune brand is perfectly poised to sort of grow into the space, and I do see we already have a lot of leads which have been signed, and at the same time, some good active discussions happening around.
I hope you're not doing leases here.
Happy to do it.
Okay, last words, Mr. Pandit, your take on spiritual travel and where do you see it going from here?
It's only going to go ahead and increase. But I think one thing we have to do is, while we look at spiritual travel for cleansing the soul, at the infrastructure level, and we are all participants in the supply chain, we have to ensure that our temples, mosques, churches and gurudwaras are also clean. The place is clean. I think because if we do that, India will actually start becoming a very clean country. And the job of Swachh Bharat and cleanliness, it's a great peg to actually start it from a spiritual destinations. So if the message goes to people, cleanliness is not only within, it's also outside. I think so spiritual travel, beyond promoting travel, it's a great lever to actually leverage the country's opportunities, whether it is safety, security, whether it is cleanliness, whether it is Atmanirbhar Bharat. So that can be made as a very big fulcrum for promoting India's image out.
Bravo. So Swachh Bharat to Viksit Bharat. And that's one of the pillars that you're saying. Okay, we can take one or two questions before we run out of time. If there's any questions from the audience, I'm sure the panelists are happy to answer. No? All good? All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. That's our time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.